Hi everyone. This episode of our class is about some review games or something you can use for check for understanding. And as you can see, the two are Jeopardy Labs and Test Moz that we're going to be talking about. Again, lots of options out there, but these two have really worked well for me in the past and are really easy to use. This is going to be a little different than typical. I just couldn't be able to talk about both the way that I wanted to be sure that you guys had the information you needed to be able to use these in a single 15-minute screencast, because that's what I'm limited to. So this is actually going to be two shorter ones, one about Jeopardy Labs and one about Test Moz. We're going to quickly just talk about both and what you can do with them like we typically do. You'll watch this one and the questions will focus on Jeopardy Labs, and then there's a second TED Ed lesson that you get to through the wiki that you'll watch about Test Moz and answer those questions. You should be able to get both done still in just about 45 minutes, as is typical for just the single lesson. So that said, in the way of what these do, it's pretty straightforward. Jeopardy Labs is a way to create online Jeopardy boards with no use of PowerPoint or anything complicated like that. Also, for either of these, Jeopardy Labs or Test Moz, you don't need an account to create a quiz or Jeopardy board or to play the Jeopardy boards or take the quizzes. This could be really useful for a lot of reasons. All you have to do is remember a couple of links, and I'll show you a hint about that as well. Additionally, it's all online. Certainly you could play in class using a projector, but students can also play at home or take the quizzes at home. And then speaking of those quizzes you can make with Test Moz, you can see student results on your end of it, and they can also see their own results as soon as they have finished and submitted their answers. So that might create some review options for you as well. In the way of uses, like we've kind of said already, Jeopardy is pretty straightforward. You can make to use both as in class, or kids can make them to use with each other. I know a teacher who assigns small groups various topics that they've been working on and learning about, and it's their job to make an entire Jeopardy game centered on that particular topic of the curriculum. And then he sets up a entertaining and somewhat complicated March Madness type bracket where the students play against each other and show their knowledge, and it works into sort of a competition. And they have a lot of fun with that, and they learn a lot by having to phrase those questions themselves and look for the things in the text and in the topics in the class that they think were important. You could also use this for some kind of weekly review of concepts or to reinforce learning that's happened in class. This one especially, you wouldn't have to ever participate in it or show it at school, but could provide it for students at home. So if they felt like they could use a little bit of extra time with the information or could use a review, that's provided for them, and they can revisit that if they feel like they need to in preparation for getting ready for a final test or a unit test. As I said, Test Moz can be used to do a lot of things, but that might include pre-tests and review quizzes both. That immediate feedback can range from just telling the student what percent they got out of the certain number that they got right, or it can actually show them what the correct answer was. So that might be particularly useful with review that's at home online. And then also, I do know that Test Moz can be used on a number of different devices. I've tried it on my phone with the internet application, and it reformats it to work quite well. So since students are increasingly bringing these kinds of devices to school that they own, and a lot of classrooms now have access to sets of these devices, you could absolutely use it in that capacity as well. So here we are at Jeopardy Labs, the aspect we're going to take a look at first. There are kind of two options, and you can see that here. You can either start building your own Jeopardy board from scratch right away, or you can browse templates, Jeopardy games that have been created by others, to either just use them outright if they're exactly what you want, or to modify just a little bit, and that way you don't have to maybe reinvent the entire wheel, but could find something that you could use part of. Let's go ahead and look at the build your own first, and we'll just do a little bit to see how this works. When you click Start Building, you don't have to have an account. Just like it said, you can be a Jeopardy Labs member. This is not required. I've never done any of this, and I've always been really happy with this site, and it's worked really well for a long time. So you don't need an account, I don't think, for any reason. If you are going to make a game, you have to come up with a password. This is only, like it says, so you can edit it later. You just need to remember this password, and I would actually recommend that you come up with a password that you just use for this site all the time, because no matter how many Jeopardy boards you make, you can have the same password to edit them. Each one gets its own URL that is different, but the password can remain the same all the time. Once you make this Jeopardy board, it does become public. Other people can see it and edit it. Certainly that's not an issue. They just kind of divulge that so that you know that it's not private. And then you do also see down here, you can utilize code to create mathematical equations or scientific notations. You could reword your questions to where this wasn't required, but it is possible. So if it's something that you want to look into, you can certainly work that into your questions if you feel like that would help your students. So we've chosen our password. We're going to click Start Building. And then it becomes as easy as this. You get to choose a title and get to choose these 5 categories. You can see that there's point values from 100 to 500. You cannot change the point values, and this doesn't have a double Jeopardy feature. Certainly you could make 2 separate boards if you wanted to play 2 rounds, but it's just the 100 to 500 choices. Up here, where you enter your title, that is ultimately going to become part of the URL for your Jeopardy board. So you can decide what you want to do with that. If you want to put your actual name in it or something, then it becomes easier for students to search for if they lose the link that you give them. For this purpose, I'm going to put in economics midterm. So I am making one that's general. Again, it'll give you a dedicated link that you can give your students, and so you don't need to put your name in this, but you can. And then we make our categories. So maybe we would do one that says terms and one that's supply and demand, and on and on. Once you've created your categories, then you're going to do your questions. All that's required to make a question is to click on that box. Just like it reminds you here, the way Jeopardy is played on television, it's backwards, so the answer, quote unquote, appears first, and then the players respond in the form of a question. You do not have to make it this way. You can erase this part down here, so you don't have to do it in that format if you don't want to. So if instead I say, what is the basic problem in economic life, and my students would have learned, that that was scarcity. So I can make it like that to where it doesn't have to have the what is, or you can flip it around to where the things are worded properly in terms of how Jeopardy is actually played on television. But once you've written your question and your answer in the way that it's organized, you just click Save, and it blocks it out so that you know that you've done that one already. And you go through and take care of your 25 different questions. Once you're all done, you click Save, and it takes you to this page. Now, it has created a special website for just your Jeopardy board. You can see that this is actually the 7th Jeopardy board that's been called Economics Midterm. This is where students go to play it, just like it says play. This is where you go to edit it, and if you need to edit it, like for example here we didn't finish it, maybe we need to pause from this and go do something else, so you save your work so far with the intention of editing and finishing it later. You just need this link, and then you would need that password you created to get in to edit it. Now, saving these things is important because just like it says, they cannot recover it for you in any way. There's a couple options here. You could take a screencast of this, or excuse me, a screenshot of just this screen and save it in a file, or write these things down in a notebook somewhere that you don't misplace. I think that a good option here that I'm going to just take a quick side note to show you is a website that's called Bitly. Especially since you can change the link for your students to make it shorter. That's why we would put them in the Bitly account compared to some other options we'll be talking about in this class. So if we go over here to Bitly, I'm already logged in and everything, and I can tell you more about this if this is interesting to you for whatever reason. But I just want to show you how easy it is. This is a URL shortener. So if I go back to my screen here, oops, and I highlight my link and copy it, I can go to Bitly, put the link in here, and it will process it and make it shorter. And you see now this is my whole link, bit.ly/ a combination of letters and numbers. Now the benefit of Bitly, and again Bitly is just at bitly.com to get an account, you can customize your link and make it something that the students might be able to remember more easily. So I could change it to Barrett Econ Review, for example. I click Save. That was available, so it's changed it to where all my students have to remember is bit.ly/ Barrett Econ Review. So this is a really good way to shorten URLs, and one that can help you to keep track of things as well. But if you don't need to shorten them, there's other ways to keep track that we'll be talking about in the class. But the URL shortener is really valuable for a lot of other purposes as well. So I wanted to mention it here for the Jeopardy boards. If we go back to our Jeopardy board then, again, you need to remember these. Let's look real quickly at the browsing option before we finish with Jeopardy Labs. So we'll go up here to Browse. Thousands of these games have been created on here, and you can see that just even some random things popping up cover everything from history to art, geography, different topics. Earlier, I searched for a lot of different things that I could come up with having to do with different subject areas like space, Algebra 2, AP Chemistry, Hamlet, exercise, art, and I got results for every single thing, that I searched for. So it might be worth taking a look at what people have already made. So let's say, for example, that we're going to look for literary elements. I find several options already, so I'll just take a look at this one. Again, this would be the time that you would spend previewing. And then this is also going to give me an opportunity to show you how students play. When you go to a Jeopardy board that's been created or that you've made, this is what students are going to see. If they're at home reviewing on their own, they probably just want to choose the one team. If you're doing this as a game at school, or they are in small groups playing with each other, they can choose more than one team, as you can see. So let's say that you are playing in class and you're going to choose 3 teams. You click Start, and this is your play screen. Now, when a student or a group of students chooses a question, you click on it, and it asks you the question that has been posed by this person that made this board. Now, if you are playing this in class, you need to know the answers ahead of time, because let's say Team 2 pops up and says we know, and they get it wrong. You need to be able to say that's incorrect if you want to give another team a choice or an option of getting the answer right. So let's say Team 3 then buzzed in and got it right. You'll say, oh, sorry, Team 2, and you can push correct response. Once Team 3 gets it right, you'll say, sorry, Team 2, you got it wrong. Good job, Team 3, you got it right. And then you click Continue, and it goes on and blocks that one out because it's already been asked and answered. If you do not use the points at the bottom, it won't block out the question. So if we just go back to the screen, you see it's still available. Even if we show the correct response, it will still show that it hasn't been done because no one's been assigned points for it. So this does help students to keep track of which ones they've looked at already, also just kind of as a side note. So let's say we've previewed this and we found a lot of these questions that we think we can use as a teacher. That's kind of how you play. It's as simple as that. If we go back to our templates, we open this one again. This is the one we just previewed. And we actually want to use this. We just click Edit. We didn't make this, so this isn't us, but we make a new password. You can use the same password that you always do on this site. And it takes us to this Jeopardy board that's already been all filled in. And you're able to change whatever you'd like. Maybe we alter this question and we alter this one. And then we change this one a little bit. The rest of them we're quite happy with. We want to keep all the categories the same. So we're done here. We click Save. And it's made us a brand new template here that's our own and specific to our class. You can see this particular template has been altered 150 times. So it's certainly true that teachers utilize this to try to maximize their efficiency here. So you can both build from scratch or browse and edit on Jeopardy Labs, and hopefully this gives you some ideas of how you could use this to help your students review either at home or as an entertaining way in class. Again, for our purposes today, you're going to answer the questions about Jeopardy Labs on TED Ed, and then go back to the wiki and click on the TestMoz TED Ed lesson, which is shorter than this, and we'll round out our work with review and quizzes for understanding.